YouTube. There you go. And you will see this will be available on the CA website, and we will send links later on as well. So this is the first of the series. It's a series next year we want to start in October, actually, and run through to April. So it's really the close season when clubs are probably looking at planning and so forth. So apologies, we're really late this year starting it. We've got 4 planned for this winter stroke spring, and they're always going to be the last Wednesday of the month. And we've got in February to do with legal structure. We're looking at cask and so forth. And then in March, we got a specific Zoom webinar for handicapping with Brian Fisk. So the aim of them is to do with club development and also for playing issues. So sometimes we might go into looking at changes in the laws, rules. Sometimes we'll be looking at handicapping and so on and so forth. Okay. So if you've got any Q&As, please, we're going to keep those to the end after the 3 presentations. Okay, right. So without any further ado, I think we'll have a go. Paul, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just run up my PowerPoint. My name's Paul Chard, and I'm with Northampton Croquet Club. So I'm going to tell you about the experience we had in Northampton and various things about the process that we went through. Right, that's gone back. Right, so I think the most important thing is that you understand what your drivers are for the fundraising. There are various options. Obviously, this evening we're going to be talking about crowdfunding, but there are other means to raise smaller amounts of money. So I'll go in why we chose crowdfunder rather than perhaps more traditional ways of fundraising. I'll talk about the process and how we secured the funding, especially the bit about match funding from Sport England, and you'll see how that fits in as we go on. I'll then talk about how we did, what we learned, and then the $64,000 question I'm always asked, will we do it again? Mm-hmm. So our drivers, just before COVID struck, literally almost the day before, we were served notice by our then landlords of some 30 years because they wanted to redevelop the land. So we went through a process of searching for a new home. We found a new home. It's a completely greenfield site. So the first thing we need is a playing surface. So our project was to, first of all, instantiate 2 quality croquet lawns. We thought about doing it ourselves, i.e. hiring in men with diggers and planning it and doing it ourselves. But we decided that was a high risk route. We'd be far better served if we could raise the money to employ someone, a contractor, to actually lay the lawns who've got experience of this kind of work. To do that, we estimated that we need something like £30,000. That's not just to lay the lawns, it's also to purchase some lawn care equipment, i.e. mowers. Up to this point in time, and the club's existed for over 30 years, all of our landlords have done all of the groundwork within our lease. So we've never had to look after the ground. That's always been something we paid somebody else to do. But now we were in a different scenario. We did look at the more traditional applying for grants. And because of COVID, there weren't very many around. And the ones that were around were all about re-establishing sports back into their homes. and some of our work would be classed as a new development. So all these big grant funders were saying, sorry, that's new. We're more interested in getting people back to play the sport they played before. The other issue we have with grant requests, if you've ever gone through this process, they can take 6 to 12 months to come to fruition. So you usually have something like declare an interest. Then if you fit the bill, then you can fill out all the paperwork. And then there's usually multiple rounds where you might get through to the next round. And that process can take 6 to 12 months. So we looked for something alternative. So the alternative was crowdfunders. So why did that appeal to us? Well, it enabled us to go for relatively large sums of money. As I said, we were looking for something of the order of 20+ thousand pounds. And the time frame is quite short. I'll talk about time frame as we go on. We also have more direct control of the process. So we weren't waiting for the next committee to meet to say your grant's moved on a step. We were in more direct control. There's lots of free courses, both from the crowdfunder organisations and for the franchises that are linked to Sport England, about what things to consider and how you might put your campaign together. I'll talk a bit more about match funding sponsors. The particular organisation we went for is called Crowdfunder. Others do exist, as they say on the TV. But the thing that attracted us to Crowdfunder was the fact they've got a relationship with Sport England, and other people who match funds for sporting type organisations. Once you've set up your campaign, you can review it before you actually launch. So you can share it with your other committee members or wider, and it's not actually launched, and you can share it with any match funder like Sport England, and they'll come back with things that they like and things they don't like. And based on you changing it, before you actually launch, you know that you've got the match funder happy. And if you meet the other criteria, which I'll talk about in a minute, then you're guaranteed to get the match funding. One word of warning: people think that crowdfunding is free. It's not free. There are costs involved. In our case, it was about 2%. And that's because we're a charity, we're a CIO. Northampton is CIO. Other non-CIO or non-charity organisations can pay up to 4 to 5%, and that doesn't include the money. So the Sports England match funding, what Sports England and organisations like them have said is, we don't want to pay you any money. So any money we put into the campaign, this is the Sport England, we don't want any of that. We want all of that money to go to the people we're sponsoring. So in our case, we were going for 20,000. 10,000 had a levy against it of something like 2%. And other organisations, as I said, would be about 4 to 5%. All of that information is on the website. You just need to look for it. So moving on, the process. You have to create an account on the Crowdfunder website. Again, it's private until you decide to launch. The recommendation that you have a 2 to 3 minute video. It doesn't have to be Hollywood style. It can literally be on a phone camera where someone's describing what your objective is for your campaign. You also need some simple web pages. There's plenty of tools there. Literally, you've got a box. You can import an image. You can write some text around the image. And if I'm honest, the real reason for the video is nobody looks at the web pages, but they will spend 2 minutes listening to you talk on a video. So that's why the video is quite important. You can have separate social media pages like Facebook. We went that route. And it's quite interesting. So I know of other clubs outside of Croquet who posted updates on their social media Facebook page. We did as well, but I also created one specifically to do with the campaign. And what was interesting is there was a lot of interest in the second Facebook page, i.e. the non-Croquet club page, from the local community that we were moving into. And they didn't have to bother themselves by so-and-so's gone to this competition. Isn't this a funny shot of somebody doing a jump shot and going over the peg or whatever? They could just look at what was happening to their locality. So again, if people are familiar with setting up a Facebook page, well worth it. And it also meant we knew who in the local community was interested in what we were doing. And some of those people are potential recruits who wouldn't normally be in the mass of people who are in the Croquet community that go to our normal Croquet page. So that was quite useful. Now the most difficult bit about the crowdfunding, and that's to organize and advertise pledge rewards. These things called pledge rewards are where you say, if you donate £5, you can come and try Croquet for an afternoon. If you donate £100, you and 20 people from your office can come and have an afternoon team building with Croquet or whatever. There's all sorts of things that you can add in. The match funders, and I include Sport England in this, are very keen that you have non-sport specific pledge rewards, like a bottle or two of wine, a tin of biscuits, a smelly candle, any of those things. They're very keen, and they want you to have relatively low value rewards as well, i.e. less than a tenner. So the first time we submitted our idea to Sport England, they bounced it because they said we didn't have enough low value stuff. And we had some £20 things. So fine, we put a few bottles of wine and a box of chocolates, and all of a sudden we passed the threshold. So for very little expenditure, we passed the threshold. So those are the things that you've got to watch. It's also indicative that the match funders will tell you where they think you're falling short. And it's up to you then to either just say, fine, I'll fill the void, or no, that's a bridge too far, depending on what your circumstances are. Again, on pledge rewards, here's an example of a flyer we sent to all of our members. So does anyone know a business or a shop who could donate a voucher or an item? We were lucky in our club. We've got one of our players is a volunteer at the local, a volunteer lock keeper at the local canal. So he offered to do a tour of a canal museum that's local to us, where he would act as the guide and talk about the canal. And that was very well received. We have another member who makes greetings cards, birthday cards, this kind of thing. And she organized an afternoon for people to come and basically be tutored in card crafting, one of a better expression. And there's all sorts of things that you can do. I don't want to steal Nottingham's thunder, but I know they did one about beekeeping. So it can be almost anything. Cake making is another example we used. The other thing, you can invite your members to donate stuff, especially if you're thinking of going in this quarter, because I'm sure all of us have got stuff that we were given at Christmas, that smelly candle or whatever, that'll never get unwrapped, but could form a low value pledge item, and tick that box. The other thing we did, because we were moving into a new community, is we did a flyer and we visited the local businesses. Not sure whether the flyers are of interest to anyone, but the most important thing is this bottom one, how you can benefit, and that's to the business that we visited. So they can be seen supporting a local community. I took charity because we're a charity, but it could be a local community sport. We can acknowledge their support on our website and Facebook page, which we did. So they get free advertising. Vouchers and the like, reminding them that vouchers and the like will draw people to you, and they'll invariably spend more once they're in the shop. Because if you've got a £10 voucher, there's not a lot of stuff for £10. It's usually 12, 15. And of course, our members and friends may be your future customers. So if you come over as a good supporter of ours, then we will support you. So those last bits help to identify to business. And on the basis of this, we got several of the local small shops gave us bottles of wine. And as I said, we had a box of biscuits and some chocolates. And that's just for visiting. Oh, and one of the local cafes gave us a £10 voucher. So other areas you need to consider when you're talking about these extra sponsors like Sport England is their terms and conditions. So we went under the scheme called Active Together, which meant that they would match our raising capability up to a maximum of 10,000. So if we raised 10,000, they would match it and we'd end up with 20,000. Before they even register their interest, we had to raise 25% of that 20,000 before we started. We had to have 100 unique supporters at the end. And clearly we have to reach the target by the deadline. So there's two modes with these crowdfunding abilities. One's all or nothing, and the other is you'll get whatever you raise. The crowdfunding processes say if you go in as all or nothing, you're more likely to get better donations, typically 30% more. So if it's I'm going to spend £2 and support your event, if you say, but if we're unsuccessful, you don't pay a penny, they're more likely to risk £5. I don't know what the psychology is of that, but the interesting thing is people like Sport England want you to be all or nothing. So they certainly believe it. They can say we've supported all these events, all these clubs, all these sports, but how many of them were successful? It does focus the mind and does keep you on top of the process because it is all or nothing. So if we hadn't raised our £10,000, we would have got absolutely nothing. Anyone who pledged anything would get their money back. So the way that it works is when you pledge money to these organizations, they go into holding accounts, and those holding accounts are either released back to the original donor if you're unsuccessful, or the money's released into your account that you've identified when you've set it up. They recommend a campaign length of 4 weeks. Typically, they say somewhere between 4 and 6. The reason they say that is if you haven't got your supporters within 4 to 8 weeks, you're not going to. You know, you're kidding yourself. You're going too long because interest wanes very quickly. And I'll show you when I show you our graphic what that looks like. Absolutely true. We chose to run for 6 weeks because we went across the Christmas period. In hindsight, not such a bright idea, but we got there in the end. If your organisation qualifies, gift aid is claimable against HMRC, and we are, and we did. As I said, just to recap, all of the stuff you put on the crowdfunder site is private. You can share it with your committee, you can share it with your members, you can share it with people like Sport England who may be match funding, but it's not actually out there in the public space until you hit a go button. So you can pull out right up until the 11th hour. So how did we do? As I said, we ran our campaign for 6 weeks. The gross raise was 20,430. Our crowdfunder cost was 339. So we actually pocketed 20,000. We claimed over £1,000 back in gift aid because we could. We ended up with 146 unique supporters. Remember, our target was 100. And the total number of donations was 157. The reason those two numbers are different is some people donated for different pledge rewards. So some people might have just gifted us a few pounds with no reward, and others took up a reward. Another important factor here is we also received over 2,500 from people who don't like going on the internet, don't like specifying their credit card, and things of that ilk. So they either haven't got the internet or they don't want to use it for this purpose, but they do want to support the club. So that 2,500 potentially we could feed back in, because your own club can sponsor your own campaign. So I'll say something that's a little bit naughty, but is legal, because I asked these people this. So if we got 100 unique people and the club made up the balance of the 10K, would we still qualify for the match funding? And yes, we would. So the critical factor for us is the people, not the money, because we'd already got 2.5. And remember, we had to raise 25%, and we could do that. But if the club pays in, obviously that's one entity with 2,500 donation. So again, you need to think about, some people won't come through your campaign, but may want to sponsor you with hard cash, a check or whatever. But the club can feed that money back in, but it'll only count as one entity. So again, this is how we did. So you can see we started just before Christmas last year. On average, 5 or 6 people made donations. That huge spike at 18 people and the green undercurve is when we qualified for the Sport England 10K. So a lot of people at that point thought, oh yes, this is a winner. I like to be seen to back winners. And so they joined in the system. Then things went a little bit quiet, but we were still short of our target. So we introduced some new pledge rewards, something we hadn't done before. So one of our members is a keen printer and did a block printing poster of a something that Reg Bamford quite often quotes in some of his seminars. And we asked Reg if he'd sign a few for us, and they went like hotcakes. So again, clearly Croquet community, and that was enough to push us past our 20K target. So in rounding off, what did we learn? We learned a lot of lessons, too many to bullet point out here, so I'll just focus on 3. Be ambitious with your targets. What do I mean by that? So we actually needed 20,000 plus, so we needed to max out. But if we didn't, we still might be tempted to go for that sort of money. So for example, we're thinking of going again in the future, because we need a clubhouse, because we've, as I said, we've moved to a greenfield site. If you just go for 3,000 or 4,000, could you go for more than that? Go for 5 or 6 and have some money left in the bank? Because a lot of these match funders are interested in that. So you're not looking at raising all of the money from the wider audience if you can get in on these schemes. The most difficult thing for us was these 100 unique supporters. As a club, we thought that's going to be the easy bit. It wasn't. So we're a club of about 40 people. A lot of people dropped off when COVID struck, not through illness, but they just felt frail and were looking for other things. So we thought, 40 people, guaranteed 40. If they've got a partner and family members, 100's no problem at all. It wasn't. For whatever reason, there was very little help. The big help was the croquet community. So in moving around other clubs, explaining what we were trying to do, people would say, yeah, I'll chuck a few pounds into your scheme. That's brilliant. We don't need you to do anything. Just make up the numbers. And something like 86% of those 146 people were people in the croquet community, not from our club. A sad indictment on our club, I know, but the importance of the croquet community. We did get a request in with the croquet Gazette, the sort of email croquet Gazette that Paul Hetherington does. And that was invaluable too, because we could see the spikes from that. So we can support each other. And there's even a groundswell of an opinion to say, well, maybe what we need to do is all come together as a croquet community and have a page in the Gazette that's about clubs trying to raise money via this mechanism to encourage other clubs to contribute. Again, what I would say is, don't be shy in asking for support from other clubs, not just the croquet community. So I did some of the online free courses. And the interesting thing is when you go into these breakout groups with other clubs, there was a rowing club, there was a cricket club in one of the sessions I was in, and just bounce ideas off of things and saying, how did you do this on the with the computer or with the internet? I was able to help out. Other people were able to help out. So please don't be shy in asking for support. Will we do it again? Yes, we would. And in fact, we're planning to do it again. It's a bit of a risky one. As I said, we need a clubhouse, but why not? If you want to look at the detail of what we did and what our pledge rewards are, there's the 2 sites. So the crowdfunder site with our campaign on it, and the Facebook group that we set up to effectively manage the updates. Anything that you think of post today that you think you'd like to know more from me from, there's an email address you can get me on. Clearly, you can look me up through the CA members area. I'm Paul Chard from Northampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. We've got one question for you, but I'm going to keep that to the end.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Thank you very much for that, and I'm sure you will be getting other questions as we go. Right, okay. Christine, over to you. You're muted at the moment. That's it.
Okay, hopefully that's it. Well, I'm sorry that my presentation isn't on a PowerPoint or graphs, so I'll have to talk to you about our experience. We went through crowdfunding because Cotswold District Council have two funds that we could access, and these funds would be up to £20,000. So we decided to go with that, and that was through a platform called Space Hive. We were advised to go for the full thing, not to go for a small item, but to go for something big that people could actually visualize and understand why we were wanting to fundraise for it. So we went for the full thing for a clubhouse. And we went and we got various quotes for a clubhouse, and it ranged from £40,000 to £25,000. So we went for the cheaper option for £25,000. And why did we go crowdfunding? There was a set completion date, and there was online support. None of us knew anything about crowdfunding. We didn't even realize there was such a thing as a URL, and what that meant and how we managed to do that. So we did get the online support to actually navigate us through that. And they provided useful tools for promoting to local businesses and the community. The process that we went through, and this was advised by Space Hive, not something we devised ourselves, and they broke it down into weeks. So week one, you and your project team are advised to all donate. And then in week two, you encourage all your friends, neighbours, and everyone around, grandchildren, grandparents, etc., to donate. And encourage donate. On week three, you widen that circle to another group of people. And on week four, the council then review how successful you've been in getting donors to go towards your project. And if they feel that it's something that the community look as if they would enjoy, and they feel that it would be a benefit to the community, then they come in with their pitch. So at week four, we had confirmation from the Cotswold District Council that the two pots of money that they had that we could go in for, one which was up to 3,000, well, we managed to gain £3,000 from one pot and £2,000 from another. So that gave us £5,000 on top of what the pledges we had from friends, family, neighbours, and everyone else that we knew would be willing to donate some cash. We did go onto the social network and Facebook. None of us knew anything about Facebook, but we had someone's son who was really good at setting up our social media on Facebook, and then we managed to persuade BBC South to come and film our club and aired in the local news, and then on week 6 to 8 we then tackled our local businesses for larger grants, and that was sort of limited success. We've got numerous building societies around Morton, and none of them gave anything at all. Well, apart from one, Savills, they donated £100. Fundraising events that we had, successes and failures. Car boot sales. Well, I'd say that was a bit of a failure, but we did raise some cash through car boot sales, but it was very hard work, very early in the morning. And we ended up with a lot of jumble at the end of it that we had to dispose of. So I would say that we will not try car boot sales for fundraising in the future. Open club events, yeah, they were fairly successful, or little success, but it did raise our profile and our awareness within our community. We did various open club events for the WI, for what's called Cotswolds Friends, and other groups that are within Morton. They were enjoyable, but we didn't get lots of money from that. We did a fish and chip quiz night, and that was very successful. It was very well supported, a one-off event, and we raised over £500 on that. Our sponsored walk to Chastleton House with a celebrity game of croquet. It had probably limited success, but everyone enjoyed it. The club members enjoyed it, and it improved our publicity amongst the businesses and the community. We have a National Trust house called Chastleton House near to us, and we're you can use that facility for afternoon teas for visitors to the National Trust House, and that was very successful. We did multiple events on that, and we must have raised over well over £1,000 on our afternoon teas. Our time scale for our crowdfunding was 6 months, and that ran from April until September. We kept reserves like Nottingham. We were allowed to transfer money that we're holding in our bank account, the club's bank account, to transfer into our crowdfunding. We knew that we were going to meet our target. Like Nottingham, if we hadn't met our target, then all the money was going to be returned to the donors. So we had been promised a sum of money, which took us over our total, which we kept in reserve, and hoping that we might be able to not use it, but in actual fact, we had to use it. And that came in at the end of the 6 months, or towards the end of the 6 months. The pitfalls of crowdfunding, it is exhausting. It takes a lot of time and effort to maintain the awareness and support. It's essential that when someone donates to crowdfunding, that you respond to it and thank them very much for their support, because I think that then encourages them to ask friends and other members of the family to donate. If you don't reach your target raised, then it is returned to the donors. The platform used takes a percentage of your money raised, and that's including VAT. We are not a charity, so therefore our crowdfunding, we raised £26,909. There are a couple of pie charts that with the presentation that you will be able to access if you would like. We raised £26,909, but in actual fact, we from that the Space Hive and VAT took over £1,000. So in actual fact, we ended up with 25,000, virtually 250, I think it was in the end. Within our pie charts, it tells you how the breakdown of what we managed to raise. We had the community fund, which is from the CDC, of £5,000. Donations less than £1,000, we raised 5,225. Donations less than £100, we had raised £950. Donations less than £50, we raised 1,425. Our anonymous donator gave us £10,000 100, and the Morton and Marsh Croquet fundraising raised 3,209, and then there was the Bamford charity. They donated £1,000. So yes, it's hard work, hard graft. In the end, yes, it's been worth it, and hopefully later on this year we'll have a clubhouse at Morton and Marsh Croquet Club. I don't think there's, I mean, apart from that, our experience mirrors very much what happened in Northampton.
Thank you very much, Christine. And the thing to say, Morton and Marsh, how many years have you been going now? Is it, are you?
Yeah, so we opened in 2021.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah. It's been hard work developing a club and then going on to trying to put in a clubhouse. Yeah.
How many members have you got, Christine, now?
We've I think we've now reaching, this is the start of the new year. I think we've lost some from last year, but I think at this moment in time we've got over 50.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Would we do it again? Yes, yeah, we would do it again, and we'll probably have to do it again. But I think probably we'd go with what Paul at Northampton has done and go through Sport England.
Okay, many thanks, Christine.
Okay.
And good luck with the club. And I promise when next time I come, I won't bring the rain.
Some sunshine, Paul.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, right. Last but not least, Rob from Nottingham.
Okay, let me try and share my screen. Right, can you all see our east lawns at the moment?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Right. So, yes, my name's Rob Edling White. I'm currently chairman of Nottingham Croquet Club, and I'm going to describe a funding campaign over the last 2 or 3 years, which was all the work was really done by my predecessor Beatrice as chairman, Beatrice McGlenn, and our treasurer John Davis. So I'm describing their work because they're not available to do so today. Oh, right. So our opportunity, we had a new 35-year lease with the City Council who look after the grounds after a long time of negotiation, and that was in 2019, late 2019 we concluded negotiations. The renewed lease covered the existing 5 lawns and pavilion which we've had since 1929, and also 3 adjacent disused bowling greens which had fallen into disrepair, and the pavilion for those greens, and also some disused public toilets which were sort of semi-detached to our pavilions, which are listed buildings incidentally, so they cost a bit to do things too. And having this new lease meant it was sensible to try to invest some money. Can you all hear me? I'm hearing some funny sounds.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's going okay. We had some challenges. This was late 2019. The old bowling greens were in a bad state of repair. They hadn't been maintained properly. They also were the wrong shape for croquet. They're sort of 40-yard square, and they have gutters in between them. They needed to be leveled and reseeded. Our automatic irrigation. Sorry, someone's trying to say something. No. Our automatic irrigation system needed to be extended to cover the former bowling greens, and the pavilions and toilets were stone built, 1920s, grade 2 listed, virtually derelict and very poor accessibility. So we needed some work there. For this new lease, because it included more facility, our rent is going to rise to £20,000 which per year, which is phased in over several years, and we'll have extra bills to pay. We're already paying for our electricity, our seed, and some of the lawn requirements, which we never had to in the past. But that does include the City Council maintaining the lawns largely. So there couldn't be a better time to invest when we've got 35 years of benefit to be derived. So we drew up a programme of the works that we wanted to do. The bowling greens needed to be levelled, relaid and reseeded to form 4 or even 4.5 croquet lawns. The sward was big enough, but obviously they were the wrong shape and they were in a bad state. We wanted to extend the irrigation system to cover the new lawn. I've mentioned that. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. We wanted to refurbish the pavilions and the old public loos to make them more accessible, welcoming, useful, spacious, and generally useful and nice facilities, because they were pretty ropey. Our before and after photos are grotesque in places, but that's partly because I made them deliberately grotesque. And we wanted to equip it for use by the public, including disadvantaged groups, as well as members and tournament visitors. And our total cost looked like it was going to be about £100,000. That's a lot of money. We're a club of, we were a club at the time of about 125 people. So funding, we did actually find pretty much £100,000. We had some savings in the club from a couple of small legacies and some stuff to do with the rent not being increased, but we were saving in case they wanted to backdate an increase. So we had some savings. We had a pledge scheme from members. Now, I don't mean pledge in the crowdfunding sense of the word. We have members who agreed that if we couldn't raise money from grant awarding bodies and crowdfunding, they would donate a certain amount. And there were some quite generous ones of that. in the end, because of COVID, amongst other things, some of the grant awarding bodies were not giving out grants in the same way. A lot of them dried up. So we called on 50% of those pledges, but it was very useful to have that to make us confident we could go ahead. I'll mention grant awarding bodies next. So we did approach a large number of grant awarding bodies. I'll talk about that in the next slide. And finally, crowdfunding. We used the crowdfunder scheme and the Sport England pretty much as Paul described. And we had some of the same challenges and some of the same achievements. We got the £10,000 of match funding. We managed to get £10,000 in the scheme because once we realised we were going to have to draw on some of the pledges from members, we said, can you pay it through the crowdfunder? But we also had a lot of support from people in the croquet community, nationally and internationally. Everyone's heard of something called the Nottingham list, which helps somehow, even though it's not officially part of the club. And we have a few members who are well known. Yes, Sport England did have requirements on the number of separate donations, the total amount, and the sort of incentives we could offer. And Paul's already mentioned we offered, Beatrice offered the beekeeping course, amongst other things, and we had all sorts of things. Incidentally, we had croquet and afternoon tea as one of the pledge rewards, and well, a few members bought some of those and gave them out as Christmas presents, and it's resulted in new members, so they proved worth their weight in gold. Of the grants, some were modest, some were large, and a few were specifically COVID and pandemic related, but COVID was a big negative on grant awarding bodies overall because a lot just dried up. So Paul's said enough, I think, about the crowdfunding. So I'm going to say a bit about applying for grants. We applied for a lot, and we recommend you apply for a lot. Because you learn and improve your skills at doing it. It's hard work, and I didn't do it. Beatrice and John did it mainly. Generic propositions don't work well. You need to look at what the grant awarding body is interested in. If they're interested in disability, you do some accessibility stuff. If they're interested in, if it's Severn Trent Water Authority and they're interested in water use, then we talk about irrigation. So it's like applying for a job. You don't use a generic CV, you kind of tailor it to what they're interested in. Oh, timing is critical. They'll never give grants. Most grant awarding bodies won't give grants for things that you've already started doing. So you need to get the money in before you've officially made any contracts. And the other interesting thing is that money attracts money. The fact that we had some pledges, we had some of our club funds and we had some pledges from members increased the confidence of grant awarding bodies that we were going to achieve this thing. And once you've got one grant, it seems to be easier to get in other grants as well. We also had a nice storyline to present to these people about going for growth and expansion, and also being one of the first sports to reopen after COVID. We were able to say, we're good for people's mental health and well-being and all those sorts of things. And we already had an established pattern program of outreach to juniors and disadvantaged communities, disabled people, things like that, so we could demonstrate that we weren't just asking for money for 120 already rich people to be self-indulgent. So when you make a proposition to funding bodies, I've sort of mentioned this, they've all got their own agendas, so you need to craft a proposition to meet their agenda, not just your own. And that sometimes means you end up with things that you don't really want or don't really need. But if you say, we want to expand our juniors work, and therefore we need some junior mallets and we need some small balls and we need, some of those things are going to be more use than others. But it fits the narrative, if you like. Remember when you're applying that you're competing with other people who are applying for the same grants, and you'll be compared by the benefits that you claim you'll achieve and how well you fit the agenda of the organisation that's awarding the grant. If you paint a complete fiction, then it's not honest, and you end up, being caught out later on. But you need to be, you need to big up what you can do and what you hope to do. It's useful to be able to demonstrate capability. If you just say, if we have this money, we can do X, Y, Z, and you've got no record of doing X, Y, Z, then they might doubt it. On the other hand, if you say, we're already doing X, Y, Z, and if you give us the money, we'll do a bit more of X, Y, Z, don't think they're getting value for money. So you have to somehow demonstrate that you've got the capability, but you're thwarted by lack of finance, and that they can kick it off. And yeah, generally, the funds start at cost, but not running costs. Oh yeah, once you've got a grant, it's not trivial to spend it. They expect fair tendering. They expect the bureaucratic process of collecting invoices and showing how they match the deliverables, and they expect a completion report to show what benefits have been or will be achieved. Big grant funding also sometimes can expect intermediate reports partway through the project. Okay. Yeah, I've mentioned that one. So it was worth the effort for our club. We raised all that money through a combination of grants, well, all those four sources, the savings we had, the grants that we got in, the crowdfunder and Sport England supplement, and the 50% of the pledges from members. We've got now launched 6 to 9. This was late 2019 we started all this, and late 2020, after the end of the season, we relayed the lawns. So the new lawns are lovely and flat. They're widely acclaimed. People like Samir Patel, for instance, said we've got to get the presidents or the opens. We're having the opens this coming season, but we've got to, get some good tournaments here. It's a great facility. Irrigation system works. The pavilions, we made a huge difference to those, and partly due to COVID, we think we've been attracting up to 50 new members a year. So our membership has gone up and our income has gone up considerably. Our outgoings have as well. So we're not making a fortune, but in terms of surplus, but and our outreach activities, we do things called Hoops for Health for disabled people and people with mental health problems. A lot of those activities are going on apace. So I was asked to do 3 hints for grant applications. So it's a lot of work. Don't be discouraged by early failures. Money attracts money, I've mentioned, but the 3 hints I would suggest, in conjunction with John Davis, our treasurer, understand the funding body's agenda and eligibility criteria and customize each application accordingly. It's no good sticking in generic applications. Demonstrate capability and willingness, but the need for funds to realise the benefits. And be aware of timing issues. Don't start or spend too soon because they don't like funding something that you're going to do anyway, or that you're already doing. They like to fund new stuff. And I think that's all I wanted to say. I can show you some more stuff on our website if we like, but we wish everybody success, every croquet club success that wants to work on grant funding applications, or indeed crowdfunding.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks very much, Rob, for that. So again, thanks to all 3 of you for spending the time putting it together, and obviously all the hard work you did at your clubs. It's much appreciated. Right. Well, over to the rest of you. If you've got any questions for the three people that have presented this evening, if you could if you know how to do it, you raise your hand, because that will bring you to the top of the screen. If you can't, just wave at me and I'll try and see you. Any questions? No? Paul Brown, you had something, didn't you? Was I right in that you had a question?
A couple of questions into the chat, Paul.
Yeah, do you want to talk to them?
Well,
Yeah, you're muted again, Paul.
the idea of the pledge prizes, I get it, but it must. I just had an impression there must be a lot of kind of bureaucracy or control required to do that. So how do you track all those pledge prizes that are promised? That was to Paul, of course.
Okay. So there's lots of things that come out of the crowdfunder site. One of them was the graphic that I showing you how many people are donating what and where. The other thing you get is the name and address of the people who take up one of the pledge rewards. So you're right in terms of bureaucracy. So when the campaign closes and is successful, because if it's not successful, you're left with a shed load of stuff that you have to get rid of. However, if it's successful, you know who the item needs to go to or who you need to contact to arrange a visit or whatever the pledge was. And so you're right, there's bureaucracy aligned to that, but it's not dissimilar from arranging the prize distribution at a raffle or something where you've got the people who aren't present for whatever reason and you need to get it to them. It's quite straightforward. It's just literally a postal exercise. There are other bits and pieces that Crowdfunder can support you with that naturally fall out. Some of them you would use, others are just there for interest.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. The insight there, of course, was the technologies there in the Crowdfunder website. So you've got some assistance to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of how they justify their expense or their cut. I just drop in something else, building on what Christine said. We've also done some traditional fundraising. And the big win for us on the traditional fundraising is not to limit it to just our community. So, for example, we've run 2 quiz evenings, each of which is thing like £500 to £600. And the reason we kind of money is because we held it in the local community centre. We published it to the local community as well as to our members. And the things with quiz evenings is a lot of these quiz masters have their own following. So by talking to the quiz master, you get their following, the locals who are just out for an evening, and the croquet community. And again, it's another opportunity to do a bit of recruitment. So we always circulate the CA croquet flyer. The other thing that was a bit of an eye-opener for us, somebody suggested we did a horse race evening. There are rules about gambling and stuff, but you can quite easily stay within the legal requirements for that. And one evening raised £1,400 for us. And again, we involved the local community by holding it at a local community centre, plus our members. And it was an evening out for the local community as much as our members. So there are opportunities to raise modest sums of money using traditional methods. You just have to look a bit wider.
Paul, you had another question as well.
I did. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I had a question for Rob. I was fascinated. It's curiosity, really, but which was, of all those different grant applications that went in, which was the most successful and why? What made it the most successful?
That's a difficult question for me because I wasn't intimately involved at the time. I was on the committee, but I was doing other activities. I know a good answer. Can I share a screen again briefly?
Go ahead.
I was communications officer at the time, and so one of the things I did was look after the website, and Beatrice asked me to acknowledge our grants and sponsorships roughly in the order of the amount they gave us. So Sport England was the £10,000 matched funding. the FCC Communities Foundation. Can you see this screen, by the way?
Yes.
That's something to do with landfill, I think.
Yeah.
It awards grants to community projects environment through landfill communities. Goodness only knows what storyline sort of generated funds from them, but somehow we did. Well, that's interesting. I can't see my, yes, here's the next one. The Croquet Association gave us something. Wesleyan Foundation, goodness only knows. East Midlands Airport, Made by Sport. Nottingham City Council, that was a small amount, I do know. From one of the local councillors, had a little budget. Federation of East Midlands Croquet Clubs.
So that's fine, Ross. The answer really was probably by a long way. It was Sport England then, I guess.
That was the biggest, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just say to that one of the things that that the waste, the landfill one, which is a very lucrative source of funds, the club has to be within so many miles of a landfill site, and you can look that up. Unfortunately, Llanfyfechan is not within, but you can look that up, and they are a very lucrative source. But this brings the point that quite frequently all local businesses that are big businesses will have some kind of community, funding that they have to give away. So for us, for example, being in North Wales, as you might imagine, we have hydroelectricity, and the local hydroelectricity people have a huge fund of money, which I have applied to and been successful in. And they say, because I know one of the trustees on their board, that the quality of the applications they get is generally very low. So anybody putting in a decent quality application, which ticks all their boxes, is actually almost certain to get the money. And so that is a very good tip, is to look at the local things that are unique. I mean, Nottingham probably has some kind of former coal board funding for all the mining that went on underneath their grounds. There's all that kind of thing is worth looking at in your specific local area.
Yeah, I can also build on that in terms of in our current temporary home, we're within a landfill area, and we were able to get £1,500 towards a cylinder mower from that source. Our new location is within the site of a wind farm, and that also was successful in terms of that funds administered by the local parish council. The one thing that really, I believe, and maybe Lionel would comment, the one thing I believe helped our cause is when they were looking for clubs to support them with the Jubilee celebration, we put on a have a go, and instantly we were known to the councillors of that parish council, which means when we submitted our claim, oh yeah, they were the good guys who came and did something for our Jubilee. And from that source we got £1,000. So yeah, I completely agree with Sarah in terms of landfill, wind farms, as Sarah said, any local big industrial area. Another source that's often overlooked is when we did one of our quiz evenings, Barclaycard have a big base in Northampton, and they offer their staff a match funding capability. So if one of their staff is involved with local charity work and organises an event, then up to £500 they will match fund. So one of our quiz evenings, we tapped somebody that we know who's an employee of that company, put them down as the organiser of the event, and we got £300. So all these little things are worth knowing about. And again, it goes back to what Sarah was saying about local businesses. The larger businesses like to be seen to be supporting local charity. So by all means, tap them up.
David, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, just really to reiterate a couple of things that have been said. We at Crate Valley started a new clubhouse project in 2018. So we went the traditional route of grants and not really crowdfunding because we had time to make the bids, but I fully concur and appreciate the time it takes to get your bids in, and what the hoops you have to jump through is horrendous. The important thing locally, more importantly, is to identify those that you might be eligible for, because I think we were potentially eligible for 80 grants, and we had to work. I was grateful up here. We got Cumbria Voluntary Services, so I don't know if other counties have got it, and they helped me identify maybe 20 that were more suited towards croquet. So there may be help locally to help you target these grants, but for sure they all take time, they all take effort. But the one that really kicked us on, we wanted about, well, we thought about 40k, but it ended up 80, but there you go. The main thing that kicked us going was the CA grant. We proved we had a valuable project. I mean, the clubhouse actually opened, Roger Staples opened it 2 days before COVID hit the country. So the timing of the grant bid and everything was pre-COVID. We've not really been able to enjoy the facilities until last year. But the key point I'm trying to make is the CA backing us. We could then go to all our local people and say, look, we're backed by our national organisation. Sport England straight away, we got 5 grand off the CA. Sport England straight away gave us 5 grand because they said your national organisations back you. It's got to be a right project. We obviously had to match fund, but the FCC, yeah, we're somewhere near a landfill area. The FCC, if you're anywhere near a wind farm, go for it. We got 15k out of them, and the only reason and they'd never ever, they said something like, I forget the figures, they've never given Croquet Club any money. To give a Croquet Club 15 grand, it totally unheard of. So to us, the key thing was getting the CA. But yeah, the key message locally is we want to put croquet out for the well-being, the mental health, all the things that, you know, I'm sure you'd all put in, but you then got to, as somebody mentioned before, you've got to prove that you do it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just say that we're going to open it to the community. You can say what we've learned, we're opening it to the community, but instead of having all loads of U3A pat and chat and take the mickey for £5 a go, you turn into the taster sessions, turns into coaching, turns into members, and the fact then that you are a members club as a cast, and people forget that you're a members club. You're trying to create more members. So you know, what we would have done slightly different was, instead of saying croquet for all, we should have finished the sentence and said croquet for all, turning into members. But certainly, yeah, that's our little tale at Crate. We ended up raising the 80 grand, and yeah, it's doable. If we'd have known about crowdfunding a little bit earlier, yes, we definitely would have done it as well. But yeah, hard work the other side, but certainly don't discourage anyone from doing it.
Thanks, David. Rob, we'll take you in order. So it's Rob, then Dave, then Lionel.
Oh yes, I had a question for I guess both the other speakers. Is when you're doing the crowdfunder, did you do a lot of publicity to get people to look at your site and donate? How did that happen? Because we tried hard and we got contributions from the broader croquet community, but we didn't get many from friends and, you know, family and neighbours and colleagues of members. And yeah, I just wondered how you managed that. We managed to get the number, the over 100, but some were sort of token.
Yeah, so we at Northampton had absolutely mirror your experience. So in terms of publicity, clearly people who befriend us on Facebook got information. We contacted the local federation. We contacted the secretaries of the clubs that we regularly play with in terms of the league matches. And I have to be honest, I think the majority of the croquet community is by members speaking to members of other clubs when they visited to play. I think all of the emails other publicity was marginal. The biggest benefit was when you're playing with somebody and you set out your stall in terms of this is what our club's going to achieve, and then people say, yeah, okay, I'll have a look, I'll chuck a few pounds in or have a look. That was the most successful element of it. It's the personal thing rather than the impersonal email or relying on people to read Facebook. And as I said, we were quite disappointed in our own members. And I took a lot of flack by saying that publicly.
I contributed something towards yours, but that was
no, that's fine. And again, I think those of us who contributed, so I know when the call went out with the Morton in the Marsh campaign, I certainly chipped in, as did other members of the club who were more intimately involved in our campaign. It's like, it's nothing in the grand scheme of things, but when the number of people is the deciding factor as much as the money, you want to get in and say, yeah, I'm going to support you because you supported us.
Yeah.
Christine, do you want to add to that? You're muted at the moment.
I would agree with all of what Paul has said. The other croquet clubs were really, and it also gave us encouragement because we saw the other croquet clubs wanted to support us. So therefore it gives you momentum. You think, oh, we can't fail this. We've got to do it. We've got to be successful. And I think that's one of the big benefits of other clubs. Apart from the financial help is always great, and the numbers, because that's what the crowdfunding are looking for. How popular is this project? You know, that they will then put money into it. But the support from the other croquet clubs is just, I can't tell you how much that means to other croquet clubs that you get that. And Dave and Lynn coming along and doing our sponsored walk. I mean, our club members just loved that. They thought it was the best thing ever. And they still talk about it. So yeah.
Don't encourage him too much, Chris.
We had a great time. It was a hot walk, and they did really well. Yeah, really enjoyed that.
On that note, over to Dave Kibble.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some perspective from the point of view of somebody who's just happens to have contributed to all three of the presentations that we had tonight. And I was just thinking about my motivations, and we started to come onto it really towards the end there, but not in any of the presentations. And yes, it's probably true that the the sort of 10 or 20 quid or whatever that people like me give to a club is relatively insignificant. If you multiply that by 100, 200 or whatever, then it starts to make a difference. So the things that mattered to me were I'd played at Nottingham, and I play at Nottingham quite a lot, and I love Nottingham. I played at Northampton several times. What motivated me for Northampton was the personal contact from Lionel. Sent me an email and said, why don't you do this? I probably wouldn't have done it had I not got that personal email. I got a thank you having done it. And then later I got another email saying, why don't you ask your friends to do it? So I did. I just happened to be chairman of the club. So I sent out an email to 130 people saying, here's a good cause. Why don't you give some money to it? It's a good thing to do. So don't be afraid to ask. Ask everybody. Ask them again. Thank them. those are all points that were kind of said during the presentations. The other thing that only just got mentioned was Facebook. In our demographic, a lot of croquet players of our age group who've got lots of disposable income happen to be on Facebook. So make it easy for them to know about what you're trying to get, and promote it in a way that inspires them to want to support you. Crake Valley, I love Crake Valley, played there lots of times. Didn't know you were fundraising. I would have given you some money. Still will if you are. Can't actually see you at the moment.
He's there still, he's there.
But likewise, you know, get the news out. Make sure you tell everybody on your email list, Facebook, Nottingham list, every possible communication channel. Do it in an inspirational way. That, you know, a brief message that says, "Come and do it." And finally, up in the Cotswolds, I'd never heard of that club, and I was just inspired by the little article that you wrote saying, you know, we'll do this walk. And as a result, again, I emailed probably 200 people saying, you know, support this, put some money into this. I don't know if you got anything from it, but you probably got numbers from it.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks very much for that. Lionel, you're next.
Apologies for arriving late. I've been busy trying to get our new club off the ground and fell asleep. Too much fresh air. But apologies if Paul has already touched on this in his presentation, but it really echoes the theme what everybody seems to be heading towards at the moment, which is we can also do a huge amount to help ourselves within the croquet playing community. When you think of the number of clubs in the country, if we do get the message out there, as Dave said, just a few pounds multiplied by a few hundred makes us an appreciable difference. But for us, I think Paul may have already emphasized this point, for us reaching the target of 100 donors supporting our crowdfunder, where we got the trigger from Sport England to give us another 10,000, we didn't think we were going to get there. When we planned the campaign, we thought we'll make that figure easily. Think of all the club members we've got, count that on one hand, count their partners, count their friends, easily more than 100. It didn't work out like that. That was for us quite a challenge. But then once we turned to the croquet community, things really started to move. So there's an awful lot of things we can do to help ourselves. And one other point, which I'm not sure anybody may have touched on, and we've all been talking about grants, but has anybody here also got experience of CA loans? Could you just, I don't know if anybody else might be looking at this option, but certainly having asked for a little bit more information in the terms, we didn't get a lot back. So perhaps I could call upon somebody who has experience of a loan, what actually happened and whether it's worth pursuing.
I think George wants to answer that one.
That wasn't what I was going to talk about, but I can do, seeing as Paul's just mentioned it. Down at Plymouth, we have a bit of a problem because we have a very insecure tenure. We're on 28 days notice, so most grants don't apply. We can't apply for them. And CA has been very good to us. And originally our stuff was CA grants. The last time we needed to do something, which is for that little mower that's in the back behind us, well, big mower behind us, we applied for a grant, and what came back was, well, we'd had a lot of money from them in grants, but they were happy to give us a loan. And the secretary of the club, who is listening upstairs, wrote the application, and of course it went off to a certain Paul, who then came back and I was going to say redlined it, helped us a lot to make the application work, and we got a loan interest free over 3 years, Paul, something like that. with I think we've got to start paying it back next year or this year. But yeah, so that's worked very well. And but you've got to talk to the development officer and get his feedback and work with him. It's a circular thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps you, Lionel, but that's he's the person to talk to for us anyway.
Okay, thanks, George.
The other thing I was going to say, down in Plymouth, I mean, one of the things we have in Plymouth, and I don't know what it's like, and Paul might know, we have something called the Plymouth Octopus Project, POP, which is a sports community network. They have a website. I can put it up if you want, but I don't know if other communities do, but it's the local council along with some other people involved, and they have meetings. I've been to them. They do lots of things, but one of the things they did do when we were looking at grants, and we were talking to the full-time employee, he had 3 A4 pages of names and addresses and for grants. Some of them weren't for us, but it was a comprehensive list, and there were about 60 or 70 people we'd never heard of. And that was really useful. And if you've got something, a community sports network or something locally, they're really worth getting involved with. We weren't able to take up on them, but they've been very helpful. A couple of other things that came up. We did some crowdfunding, but not for the club. It was nothing to do with Croquet, but I got involved with it as a crowdfunder virgin about 7 years ago, and we had we're trying to raise 200,000, and crowdfunding was just one of the arms. We used crowdfunder, and it was amazing how helpful they were. Somebody was saying, all about the pledges being kept track of, all their documentation, their bits and pieces they do, their graphs, their information was really good. But what was really good was we had the local count, well, we didn't know, but they were going to match us. And they said, if you get to 15,000, we'll match you 15,000, something like that. But we weren't. We were one day away from the end of our thing. We were 2,000 short for that. But Crowdfunder phoned me up. I was on the Croquet, I was in the middle of a game actually, and said, this is urgent. And it's a girl, she may not work there anymore, a girl with a funny name, but she was very helpful. And they extended us for a week and said, look, if you can get that extra 200 that week, you'll get your matching. And then they said, as a side, of course, you could actually, you put it in yourselves if you have to from your own funds, which is what people have talked about. And they were very helpful suggesting that and making it happen so that we were able to get it. Advertising, one of the things we did, we had a Facebook page, we had a web page, we had a video, we got that professionally done. We're the BBC broadcaster to voiceover. Well, no, we started with that, but it went to somebody more better than that. And then we got everybody to put their signatures on their email. So if you've got your email, you put your signature at the bottom, or you can put a signature at the bottom. It's just a bit of typing you do, or a picture or something. And we got people to put that in there. So every time an email went out from any of us, whoever it was seeing where the crowdfunder was, the address and what it was about. It didn't take anything, cost nothing. And we got some very strange donations from people who we'd never heard of, including some guy who gave us a really big amount of money, or he didn't, company he worked for, one of the big international companies, wanted to give him a retirement present, and he said, no, instead of that, collect the money, by all means, give it to these people. And we don't know how it came about, but they heard of us. So this getting everything out there, getting anybody and everybody involved, even outside of your own community, is really helpful. There we go.
Thank you, George.
Oh.
David, you've come back. You want to add something?
Yeah, just to put a slightly different slant on it, really. I mean, everything's been really positive tonight, and I've been there. I understand it. We're all improving something, and we want people to come on board. Just a little, probably one lesson that if we had our time again, we would ask our members, do you actually want the little green hut that you've got to put a coat on to go inside, that's been there 100 years? Do you want that knocked down? And do you want a nice new building? Because amazingly, some people were quite happy to come along at the same time that they always come along at, have the same facilities. So I think sometimes you have to engage your members, depends on the project you've got. I mean, everyone's pleased with it now, but I can understand now, I couldn't understand at the time, I can understand now why we got decent donations from members, but there's quite a few that didn't, because it's upsetting their pattern, it's upsetting their day. I mean, Nottingham going from 125 to 215. Okay, you've got extra lawns, but are some members getting put out? So I don't know how you do it, but maybe talk to them a little bit. Just because you on the committee think you've got a great idea like we did, and it's been a great asset and there's massive positives come out of it, but I'm not saying that you should cave into the people that don't want change, but maybe work with them. And then I'm surprised. I mean, we've done a history book, 125 years. There's 20% of members, maybe 25, maybe more, not even bought a book, £10. You know, so they like their own little thing, and maybe somehow, you know, engage with them. So that's not to do a downer on it. It's just some people are wary of development. So maybe just try and get them on board as well somehow.
David, Paul, I think this will make, we're coming up to our 19 minutes.
Okay.
And, I think we'll call this the last contribution, if you don't mind, Paul.
No, that's fine. So following on from the Dave and David about the demographic of the general demographic of croquet players and how do you engage with people. So one of the things we latterly did in our campaign is asked a few friendly members what was preventing them from contributing to the crowdfunder. And apart from one or two don't use the internet for various reasons, scared of it, etc. Another common reason was, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So what I did is I made up a short video, which was the screenshots of going through the process of making a donation, and posted it on our Facebook page. And then they could join in. So I think, echoing what previous David said, understanding why they're not contributing, whether it's because they don't agree with the direction set by the committee, or whether it's because actually there's a lack of understanding here, and if somebody could show me what to do, I'd be more than happy to do it, is a very important factor. Because it can be that sometimes committees operate in their ivory towers for the good of all, no question, but sometimes it comes across as you're in an ivory tower. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Right, okay. Unless there's any other questions or any contributions, I'm going to thank our three presenters. I thought they did a great job. Thank you very much. And thanks for everyone who turned up. Our next webinar is on Wednesday, February 22nd. And as I said to you before, it'll be about legal structures for croquet clubs, which we've touched on a little bit tonight with Northampton. I've put a couple of links on the chats. What I will do is I'll make those available. And I think there's quite a few. I think I've put on that. Let me just go through it quickly. There was a Sport England Active Together, which takes you straight into the crowdfunder. There was the Christine Space Hive. I put that on there. I've put, there's also there's a direct link into Grant Finder. I've got that one there. And then George has just added Plymouth Octopus to that list. So I'll try and compile that for you if you've not already taken a picture of it. But I think we're there. So thanks again for your involvement this evening. I hope it's been of value to you. And see you next month, if not before. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye.
Great session. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul. I put that octopus up there just in case. It's no good to anybody else, really, but it's out there, and I guess there are others out there. You may know about them.
There are, yeah, and I'm sure people will find them. Thanks, George.
Okay.